Apollo 11 Questions with Anthony Gräuel.
So this is mainly where I work at. It's not really much of a studio, so to speak, quote unquote, but I do like the home environment because at least I don't have to go anywhere, and plus I can just feel more comfortable being in my own space rather than being in a studio and sharing it with other people. I'm more of a simplistic approach kind of person, so working on something quite different at the moment. This is where I keep my artworks from recent times, but sometimes I like to have some more hung up because at least like I can have some of my favorites put up that you won't be able to see clearly because it's multi-layered, this stuff. And also I like to keep some inspiration in books, so at least got a lot of John Jesus manga, which is quite the collection at the moment. But yeah, so this is pretty much what I got at the moment. So this is only what I got, but this is like my space, so I prefer it that way.
1. Can you tell me about the moment you realized painting was your path? Was it a gradual discovery or a sudden revelation?
I've always been creative ever since I was a child, mainly due to drawing, nevertheless. I mean, originally it was like, ancient Egyptian like mythology, which was always like a key interest, and like the imagination of like creating characters. What also drew me to it was, as a child, you always get creative, you always have an imagination. When it came to painting, though, that was like a gradual pathway. And I guess I've always been to painting, but I didn't consider doing it up until 2020 when when we were in lockdown. And I was doing makeup art for quite a long while, but with me, I always get bored because I hate doing things that are like restricted into one thing. I like to do things that like expands into my repertoire. So it originally started as a joke to myself, betting I couldn't do art, and here we are now. So it's become, what started as a joke became more of a hobby. I don't consider it as a job, it's a hobby because I enjoy doing artwork. If it becomes a job, I would probably be bored and I just feel like I'm just doing work I just don't like. So that's pretty much how I see it.
2. Your work has such a gothic, otherworldly energy. What drew you to this particular aesthetic?
What drew me to the gothic aesthetic? As far as my memory goes, my earliest attraction to it was horror films, especially the Universal Horror Monster era and the Hammer Horror era. Because my granddad used to put them on the telly when I was a kid. Whether it's about parenting, that's up to you. But I always found like such a fascination towards the dark side of life. Even though I don't show it, but it's fascinating though, because like there's different complex layers of emotion and presentation to it. And as I got older, I got drawn into the alternative scene in terms of like outfit and music and attitude. So it becomes like a no-brainer to incorporate that into my artwork, but it wasn't necessarily the plan at first because I just wanted to go into the figurative direction. But as becoming more attracted to the architecture aspects, and that's where it comes in, because Gothic architecture, especially in cathedrals and churches, are such a fascinating quality. And I incorporate that into my artwork in recent times, like for a year now, because I feel like there's something to explore there outside of just like the casual person landscape kind of thing. So that's pretty much where it goes from.
3. What emotions or themes do you aim to evoke in those who experience your art?
Intrigueness. Of course it'd be intimidation because it's not exactly part of the norm, or it's not part of the natural realm, so to speak. But again, I want intrigueness from people to kind of like figure out what's the story behind a certain piece of art. Because the only description you're ever going to get is the visuals and the title. And I'd rather have people have their own theories of what does it mean essentially. And I'd rather not tell people the answer because that would kind of like kill mystique. I'd rather hear the theories. And every time I hear people think what this particular artwork means to them or what they think it's about, it kind of like inspires me because it makes me think, okay, they're thinking of something in a different direction that I'm not thinking in. So that's kind of like what I want, really. But I also want people to feel like they can sort of immerse themselves, so to speak, to kind of think of an artwork like a window into a different realm of sorts. So that's kind of like the aim here.
4. What role does your personal history or background play in shaping your creative vision?
How does my personal history play into my vision? Um, Obviously, I'm autistic, so growing up as autistic, you feel you're not you're not like everyone else. You feel like you're kind of the outside of things, and it's kind of like stuck with me ever since. And for a really good reason, because I feel like you can kind of like help people who went through the same situation as you can relate to it. So if it's personal, they can relate to that because that's how they were feeling essentially. But also, mental health is a part of my way of just getting my own vision because again, it's finding people who can relate to it, but it also makes me feel purified in getting out what I'm feeling like, what I'm thinking essentially. And it's a good way. It's very therapeutic because it helps you feel like you're getting the part of yourself out there, and it makes you feel better that you're able to um, exercise your demons, but also exercising with your demons, depending like where you're coming at. So that's where my artwork originally came out because there was so much in me I just had to get out. But it's still kind of there essentially because there's still always a part of me that I just need to get on canvas. So in a way, it gets people to realize like I understand where he's coming from, and that's the goal. It's always been the goal.
5. Were there any specific artists, writers, or cultural movements that sparked your interest in Gothic art?
Yeah, and the main influences, Francis Bacon is the top one, and Zita Kinski, Maxine Ducati, Graham Sutherland, Maggie Hambling, and Bob Ross. Shocker. Uh, but writers, though, I've always been intrigued by Dante's Alighieri with the Divine Comedy, in terms of how he depicts or describes vast landscape with the power of words. And even when you don't have illustrations, you just have to picture it inside your head. And also, there's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Again, the godmother of horror and science fiction. I mean, that's debated, but that's how I feel about it. But in terms of like writing though, because that's the thing though, it's like art isn't just the visuals and the music, it's also can be a literature because that's how we get the inspiration from for a lot of the things we have today. That's where like it inspires me essentially because without those people, I would not be here, like literally.
6. When you worked on the cover for Martian, years 2013 to 2023, what inspired your interpretation of the album's themes?
What inspired the artwork for The Martian? X-Files. As anyone who grew up in the 90s, right, remember the big Martian boom during that time. And as soon as Stefano Arc asked me to do his album cover based on Martians, I knew where I wanted to go because I always wanted to do something based on that, but I just didn't know I just didn't have the right time to do it until that moment in time. And of course, like I had this idea in my head, like of a Martian with flying solar system planets in the background, but it just made perfect sense. And as soon as I presented it to Stefano, he immediately loved it, and I'm glad we actually were on the same page about it because, again, Stefano is one of those people. Even though we're from different backgrounds, he's a kindred spirit in terms of creativity, and I appreciate about that about him.
7. As someone who creates such powerful visual narratives, what are your thoughts on the human condition and its place in the vastness of the universe?
To me, human beings are fragile. We're one small part of the bigger picture in terms of the universe. There's so much out there we don't know. There's an excitement and an intrigueness about it, but there's also the fear about it, which is quite an incredible concept to think about it. And that's why I like doing narratives because it kind of builds this bigger place, but it condenses like the status as we are as a species. And again, that's a really interesting concept to go at because it's not about like how big it is. It's more about what is something about it that we don't understand, and that is a great mystery behind it.
8. If you could paint one moment or idea from the future of the universe, what would it be and why?
Probably the moment when the universe starts collapsing on itself. I don't know why, but I feel like it's such a challenging process to go through if one wants to venture that. But I always feel like it would be something really unique and creative to actually think about because people love painting the beautiness of science fiction or outer space in general. But I feel like it's pretty interesting if we go about what happens at the end, because we don't know how things are going to end visually, but we can always try and figure that out for ourselves, enough through our own heads and through our own creative process. So that's how I like to put one moment in the universe that I would like to put down on canvas, which I really can't wait to try out if there was ever opportunity for me to do that.
9. How do you see the relationship between music and visual art? Do you think one enhances the other?
Do I think music enhances the art? Of course it does, because music is a way to express an artist's desires, as in how we feel about ourselves, about certain things, and the artwork has to convey that because it's the message, it's the theme, it's the approach. And also you see art as a good way to enhance one's creative process, because we need it in order to figure out like what is the vibe we want to go for. We need to match that. And artwork is still very important to this day, which is why people always look at the album cover first before listening to music, because they want something that kind of like stands out to them. And for me, that's the most important point when doing album covers for certain people, because I want something that can match their musical landscape. At least that way, it's one solid package, and that's what it has to be.
10. What advice would you give to artists trying to express their unique voice in a world that can feel so overwhelming and vast?
What advice to give to artists trying to express themselves? Don't give up on your daydream. Just keep grinding. But when it comes to a time when you feel like you're stuck somewhere, just go nuts. Just make a mess, because sometimes making a mess can actually open the door for something different. Or go outside your comfort zone and try to do something different, because at the end of the day, if you ground yourself in one single genre of art, you're going to feel stuck. You're going to feel like you can't breathe, you can't go somewhere else. And that's what I do, because if I feel stuck, I go for somewhere I'm not comfortable in, and that's part of the point, because we need to feel like we're able to breathe somewhere creatively, and we need to expand ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in a box for the rest of your life, really. So that's my thing, though. Don't give up. Keep trying, and you'll get there, and you'll get on the other side.
11. If you could go back in time, what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self, and why?
I would just tell myself, like, it's okay to have a bad day, it's okay to be unmotivated, it's okay if the painting you want to work doesn't work out, because not everything you do is going to be a success, so to speak. I mean, obviously there's going to be some point in an artwork that you feel like it's not good enough, but I say every art piece in general that you do is a lesson, and it's something to actually keep you more focused for something for the next art piece ahead. At the end of the day, being a creator is all about being persistent and persevering, because if you don't have that, you're going to be stuck in your tracks for a long period of time, and you're not going to be able to get out of it unless you actually admit to yourself saying, it didn't work, but I'll try to do the better next time, and use that as the main motivation. And I say that's anyone that's going through hard times while creating something. At the end of the day, it's just all about, carrying on rather than stopping, because the only way you're going to get forward is by not looking back.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We leave the moon man in nightmares, we're blazing. Cover strain, he ain't phasing. Moon man, able to get chasing.